What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. Today, we are doing a video looking at the 10 top blue chip key comics of the future. That's right. All right, I'm going to explain the criteria of these 10 books. But before we get into the books, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Check out all the awesome links in the description below as well. I do want to let everyone know that if you are in need of comic book supplies, check out bcwsupplies.com. There's a link below in the description as well for that. You can use the discount code JOURNOS and receive 10% off of your order anytime you shop from their website. It never expires. It's good for however many times you want to use it. All right. Now, one more thing before we get into these top 10 blue chip keys of the future. It is A1 Wednesday, so I got to take just 1 minute to give a big shout out to my local shop, A1 Comics. But guess what? You don't have to be local to the Sacramento area to visit A1's IG live sales, because they have awesome live sales on Instagram every week, twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time. They go for 3 hours, folks. 3 hours. If you aren't following A1 Comics on Instagram, their information is below as well. They are also live on Twitch every Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you are in the Sacramento area, though, A1 Comics is always buying, whether that be comics, Pokemon, Magic, trade paperbacks, pulps, toys, statues, original art, and more. You can see the contact information there for comics. Hit up Landvin. For cards, hit up Christian. We got their phone number right there for you, or you can visit their website, a-1comics.com. All right, who is ready for some blue chip key comics of the future? We have a runner-up. So I'm going to show you this honorable mention, and we're going to talk about it. And with this book, I'm going to explain the criteria of the top 10, okay? So our honorable mention blue chip key of the future is The Walking Dead #1. Why do I feel this book is a blue chip key of the future? Well, first and foremost, this book, in my opinion, in this series, revolutionized comic books, not just the indie market, but comic books in general. I really believe that in the 2000s, in that decade when, you know, the big two, Marvel and DC, was trying to come out of the 90s and they were trying to reinvent themselves, it really brought solid storytelling and outside of the box thinking to bring a lot of people back into the hobby. And I think The Walking Dead absolutely did that. Robert Kirkman did something absolutely amazing with this book, and we know what the success of the AMC series has had. But let's look at these numbers, and I'm going to break down what these numbers mean for these books that we're looking at, okay? So we're looking at a high CGC 9.8 sale right here. That's not fair market value. That's just the highest CGC 9.8 sold. $4,900, okay? Pretty solid. High raw, again, this isn't fair market value. This is just the highest raw book sold on the census, $1,500. Now, this is what's more meaningful right here. Average 5-year ROR. What is ROR? Rate of return, okay? So we're looking at the rate of return for each year for the last 5 years. Now, what is rate of return? It's basically the increase in fair market value for this book each year, right? And then we get an average out of that to look at the last 5 years. So that number is 11%. So what does that mean? It means on average, this book increased in value by 11% each year. Now, it's not that black and white, because look what it says here. This book actually had 2 years of loss. That means the fair market value dropped. But when you calculate averages, right, it evens out to an 11%, meaning some years it might have had a 30% increase in value. All right, now let's look at this 5-year ROI. You ask, what is ROI? ROI is return on investment. So basically, this 5-year return on investment means we look at the fair market value of today, compare it to the fair market value from 5 years ago, and that's a positive 58% increase. What does that mean? It means if you bought this book 5 years ago and you sold it today, you'd make about 58% back in profits. That's absolutely solid. Now, I know this book has had its ups and downs. I think, the success and then the kind of, I wouldn't say backlash, but, the last couple of seasons of the TV show didn't get as, good of reception as the earlier seasons. I think that pulled a lot of people out. But ultimately, I think long-term, this is definitely going to be a blue chip key of the future. All right, so I broke down all the data for you guys. Now we're going to be counting down 10 through 1. So let's get to it. Number 10. Uncanny X-Men number 266, a controversial one, but we're staying away from the controversy. This is the first full appearance of Gambit, released August 15th, 1990. Beautiful cover art by Andy Kubert. Chris Claremont, obviously, we know what he's done with writing X-Men for multiple decades. This book, in my humble opinion, is absolutely a blue chip key of the future. Let's look at what this book is doing. High CGC 9.8 sold for $1,507. Wow. A high raw sold for $510. This book has been booming. Average 5-year rate of return, 40%. So again, what does that mean? On average, over the last 5 years, every year this book has increased 40% in value from what it was sitting at the year before. Okay? Now, what is the 5-year ROI, return on investment? 300%. That is huge. This book has been on absolute fire as of late. Here's the thing. I have a feeling this book is going to cool off some. It has boomed over the last year and a half. I do think this book is going to cool off a little bit in the near future unless we get like an X-Men announcement in the MCU and it features Gambit. But just because I assume that it's going to have a cool off period doesn't mean it's not a blue chip key and that it's going to have that long-term success. And again, you ask yourself, what is a blue chip key? For those that don't know, I did a video explaining what a blue chip key. I'm going to leave a tag on the top here for you guys to click that clickable link to go check that video out as well. But here's the thing. A blue chip key, in short, is a book that has precedent in terms of how it is producing on the market year after year. All right, that's why we can look at Amazing Fantasy 15s and we can look at Hulk 181s as blue chip keys, but because we know that they are a very low risk investment that in the long term are going to provide you a solid return on investment, that ROI. All right. I have absolute faith in this book. I think Gambit is going to be a beloved character for years to come. And here's the thing too. A lot of these books, you're not going to see Silver Age or Bronze Age books on this list. And another thing that these books have going for them, if they're, from the early 80s, 90s, or even 2000s, is that if they're a newsstand, they're going to command a premium on top of the standard fair market value, because we know that era of newsstands were a smaller percentage of what's available on the market, and especially in high grade, they are much more scarce. So let's move on to book number 9. All right, this is NYX number 3, the first appearance of X-23. This was released in February 2004. Josh Middleton on the artwork, Joe Quesada. This book has boomed without, even before we saw the character in Logan or in live action, this book has just had a cult following ever since it's come out. We know how successful Wolverine is, and I think this book is absolutely here to stay. Let's look at these numbers. High CGC 9.8, $2,100. High raw, $1,500. All right, average 5-year ROR, 44%. So again, on average, this book has continued to increase in value around that 44% mark every year. Crazy. 5-year ROI, 344%. That is big. So again, if you bought this book 5 years ago, you are absolutely rolling in the dough. All right. And hey, look, MCU, X-Men in the MCU, maybe one day, some year down the line, right? All right, let's move on to number 8. One of my favorites on the list, Amazing Spider-Man 252. First appearance of the symbiote suit, released January 31st, 1984. Ron Friend's, classic Amazing Fantasy 15 Homage cover, written by Tom DeFalco. This book has taken off as well, and I think a lot of you watch it probably like, I don't even need to go into why this book is a blue chip key of the future. I mean, it's just absolutely iconic for those growing up in the 80s. Enough said, right? High CGC 9.8, coming in at $2,225. A high raw has crossed that $1,000 mark at $1,010. Absolutely madness. Average 5-year ROR, 54%. Again, solid. 5-year ROI, 611%. We're getting into some big territory here. This book has just been doing absolutely amazing. I don't really see this one slowing down anytime soon. I always talk about ebb and flow. It's natural in a healthy market. Books, have peaks and valleys. But this book, it may, if after the Venom 2 comes out, Let There Be Carnage, and maybe we don't see Tom Holland in a black symbiote suit soon, it could kind of stagnate for a little bit. But again, long term, this book is going nowhere. All right, let's move on to number 7. Some DC love here. This is Batman 423, Todd McFarlane classic here. This was released September of 1988, written by Jim Starlin. Look, I talked about Todd McFarlane. He's the living legend. He's the modern day Jack Kirby, in my humble opinion. His legend is going to continue to grow. It's going to absolutely continue to grow. And this book has been madness. Been absolute madness over the last couple of years. High CGC 9.8 sold for $2,500. High raw sitting at $275. Average 5-year ROR, 74%. A lot of that is over the last couple of years as well. 5-year ROI, 860%. If you bought this book 5 years ago, if you bought a few copies of this book 5 years ago, you're rolling in it, man. You're rolling in it. I was lucky to get a copy of this book in a collection. I do believe it was a second print, but still solid. It's a nice mid-grade, maybe 4.5, 5.0. But very happy. I saw this book climbing, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to own that book, but was able to get in the collection, and was very, very happy with just having some type of copy of this book. All right, moving on to number 6 on the list. New Mutants 98. Yes. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from the Deadpool haters. This is the first appearance of Deadpool, released August 15th, 1990. Look, there has been so much hate around this book. This book has seen a good amount of ebb and flow. It has. It boomed with the release of the first Deadpool film. After that, it really cooled off hard. It never, went down. It was a new floor. It never went down to what it was before the Deadpool movie, but it dipped pretty hard. But then it started to climb up again. All right, it's kind of leveling out right now. It's kind of sitting. But look, Deadpool is here to stay, people. Deadpool is going to be iconic over the next 10 to 20 plus years, in my humble opinion. And say what you want about 90s books. Oh, there's so many copies out there, and all this and that. And look, I'm gonna put it out there right now, since we're just about halfway through this list, okay? Calling a book a blue chip key doesn't mean it's ever going to be worth what an Amazing Fantasy 15 is pulling in. It's never. It's not saying that it's going to be worth, a 9.8 Hulk 181 coming in at like close to 50K right now, right? It doesn't mean that. We know that most Copper Age, late 80s, early 90s, and modern books probably aren't going to get, if ever, are ever going to get to the point of especially those classic legacy Silver Age and even those few Bronze Age blue chip keys. But it's still, you still put them in the category of blue chip keys for their era. Let's look at these numbers. High CGC 9.8 sold for $3,400. I think the fair market value is leveled out down to around 2,800 right now, if I remember correctly. High raw, 1,981. That might have been a newsstand. But look at this. Average 5-year ROR, 32%. It's even with the ebb and flow, it's still solid. All right. 5-year ROI, 188%. It's almost tripled, in value if you would have bought it 5 years ago. Even with the dips and the ebb and flow, like I said, it's still a solid investment. And again, when we get Ryan Reynolds in the MCU and we have another solid film, I think this book's going to take another jump. All right, we are halfway through the list. You guys excited? As excited as I am? Let's just get to number 5. This is the book Ultimate Fallout 4. If you watch my channel, you have heard me calling this the modern day Hulk 181. And again, I'm not talking about dollar amount here, but I'm talking about what it means to this generation. This is the first appearance of Miles Morales, released August 3rd, 2011, cover art Mark Begley, written by Brian Michael Bendis. We know, most of us know anyways, what Ultimate Fallout 4 and Miles Morales has been doing on the market. Look, this book is cooled off a little bit right now. It did have a high CGC 9.8 sale of $3,995. Woo! Now, that fair market value has dropped to around, right now, from looking at the numbers, I would estimate the fair market value to be around $2,800, but that's still really solid. And when you take into account the 5-year ROI and the ROR, that is taken from current fair market value and not the CGC high. So I want you all to put that in perspective here. Yeah, like I said, ebb and flow is good on a healthy market. Once we get a trailer for the next Into the Spider-Verse, that's gonna push this book. And like I've said before, once we get Miles in the MCU, which we are, mark my word, obviously, that's just my opinion. Once we get Miles in the MCU, maybe a few years down the line, woo! This book is not going nowhere, people. Mark my word, mark my word, mark my word. Average 5-year ROR, 107%. That means this book is, on average, over the last 5 years, more than doubled every year in value. And do you know about compound? Do you know about compound? ROR compounds too. So, all right, 5-year ROI, 1,329%. Oh my goodness, I'm about to faint. I say no more. I say absolutely no more. I'm a Peter Parker guy all the way. He's always going to be my guy. But Miles Morales, that's the dude. All right, everyone. Coming in at number 4, we got some more DC love. Batman Adventures number 12. The first appearance of Harley Quinn in comics. Released August 3rd, 1993. This book has just been madness as well. Now, I know the numbers may not reflect that, but here's the thing. Well, I'm going to explain it. Let's look at these numbers. It's already such a big book, and it's been gaining ground over the last decade. We could go past the last 5 years and really look at what this book has been doing. CGC 9.8 high sale, $4,295. Wow. Absolutely wow. High raw, crossing well over that $1,000 mark at $1,100. Average 5-year ROR, 21%. 5-year ROI, 137%. So this book is well more than doubled in value over the last 5 years. But like I said, this is the book that, you could go back before 2016 to see this book catching fire. It's one of those books. It's one of those books with one of those characters that ultimately defined a generation. It defined a generation, and now those that are adults, we're all here middle-aged men that grew up watching the Batman animated series and reading these books when we were kids. I don't see this character going anywhere. This book is what it is for a reason. Let's move on to number 3. We are in the top 3 of blue chip keys of the future, and this wouldn't be a list without Amazing Spider-Man 300. And you can argue that this is absolutely a blue chip key right now. But look, it's only, 33 years old, so we got to put some things into context. Let's look at what this book is doing. First off, for those that don't know, first full appearance of Venom, classic McFarlane cover that's been cover swiped so many times. But look at this, high CGC 9.8 sale for $8,500. That is money. High raw, $4,150. Wow. Average 5-year ROR, 57%. 5-year ROI, 589%. Now remember, I did a video in, 2018, stating in 2016, if you had X amount of money, I think it was like, I don't know, $60,000 or something like that. If you could, or maybe, I don't even know. I said, if you could buy one Amazing Spider-Man #1 and like a 9.4, because I was like the fair, whatever it was the fair market value of an Amazing Spider-Man 1 9.4. And you could buy, it was like 400 9.8 Amazing Spider-Man 300s. Which would you buy? And I said 400 Amazing Spider-Man's 300. People laughed at me. People came in my comments. They were like, "I love you, dude, but you flipped your wig. You're absolutely nuts. It's not going to happen." Da 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 da. Well, guess what? Earlier this year, I think it was in the beginning of the year, I sat with my co-host Jeff of Comic Book Canon, and we crunched the numbers. And if you would have did what I said in 2016, if you had that much money and bought the 400 Amazing Spider-Man 300s, you would have maximized your profits in like 6 figures. Over, I think you would have gained maybe like, I think dollar amount wise, maybe around like $20,000 in your return on investment with buying that one Amazing Spider-Man #1. You would have increased your return on investment hundreds of thousands. I think it was 200 and something, if not more, that you would have had a return on investment on all of those Amazing Spider-Man 300s. So everyone called me crazy. I proved you all wrong. This is a mammoth of a book. And again, we could talk about ebb and flow. We know it's been hot because of, the Venom movie. We know it's been hot just because maybe, the COVID market, call it what you will. But this book is that book of its era as well. This is the Hulk 181 of the 80s, right? Of that Copper Age era. Hands down. Love this book. It's one of my favorite that I own in my collection. So I hope you guys at least, maybe you didn't buy a few hundred copies in 2016. I hope you bought a couple. Let's move on to #2 on the list. Another big, huge book. Star Wars Clone Wars #1. First appearance of Ahsoka Tano. Released September 10, 2008. Dave Filoni doing some artwork on the cover. Look, this book is what it is for a multitude of reasons. We've seen over the last couple of years the explosion of Star Wars fandom with the Disney Plus Mandalorian series. Really, a few years back, we had a very divided fandom. Things are headed in the right direction. They have been over the last couple of years with Filoni and Favreau really taking the reins of everything Star Wars. And I think the Star Wars mania is absolutely here to stay. I don't need to say anything more about Star Wars as a franchise and what it's done. All right. Let's look at these numbers. High CGC 9.8 sold for $4,200. High Raw sold for $2,900. Average 5-year ROR 96%. Again, that means it almost doubled in value on average every year. 5-year ROI 1,956%. Absolute madness. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing with this book. This book was already a low print run. I don't have the numbers off of my head, but I want to say it was like in the 20-something thousands. All right. Don't quote me on that. If anybody watching has more of an accurate number, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. Here's another thing though. The newsstand edition is so rare that there's not even a fair market value for it. I have a newsstand. It's in pretty decent shape. It's got a couple color breaking spine ticks and whatnot. I say it's a very fine near mint. This book is so rare that people are selling them and not even realizing that it's a newsstand copy, and they're being blended in with the direct issues. There's been a few on the market that have sold as newsstands that people knew. There was like a beat up copy that probably wasn't better than a VG, like a 4.0. And this was way back in summer of 2020 that sold for almost $800. I'm telling you, when people start getting hit to the newsstands that are out there, and I'm not just saying this because I own one. I mean, it's just a fact, because you talk about, supply and demand in especially in high grade, because these books were only distributed, the newsstands were only distributed at that point in time mainly to a select market like Barnes and Nobles and border stores, where you had them on the shelf with like People magazine and Rolling Stone magazine, and there's very, very little high grade out there. So when you put, supply and demand in terms of what's available on the market for this book, for both direct and newsstand, and you look at just everything that's going on with Star Wars right now. I can't wait for the Ahsoka TV show. This book, again, blue chip key of the future, in my humble opinion. Now, I probably could have put a couple more Star Wars books on this list, but I had to only fit 10. All right, but we do have one more. One more book, and I'm wondering if any of you are guessing what number one may be. Drum roll, please. Brrr. Number one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number one, the first appearance of the Turtles, Splinter and Shredder. Released May of 1984. Written and art done by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And boy, did this book change my life. Did these characters change my life? I've talked about what the Turtles mean to me, and they mean that to so many other people. In this book, if there is a book from the 80s that is absolutely solidified as a blue chip key right now, it is this book. It is absolutely 100% this book. High CGC 9.8 sale, sold for $90,000. $90,000. Now keep in mind that sale was from late 2019. All right, there was only a couple more that sold after that, and I do believe they were around the 70,000 range. But keep in mind, there aren't too many 9.8s of this book popping up on the market at all. But still, this book is on fire. High raw sold for $15,100. Absolute madness. Average 5-year ROR, 24%. So I think that just goes to show you that this book has been big for a while now. All right, but look at this 5-year ROI. 1,563%. If you purchased this book 5 years ago, you hopefully reaped some benefits in your return on investment. There's nothing more to say about this book and what this book did for comic books, what this book did for pop culture, and just the turtle culture that was created. You know, that so many of us growing up in the 80s and the 90s fell in love with and became so much part of our lives. So that's why this book is number one, because again, this book in 2021 right now, in my humble opinion, is already absolutely 100% a blue chip key comic. So before I go, I got to give a shout out to all my members of my channel before I end the video, but I do want to say thank you all so much for watching. I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of the books on this list. Let me know if you have any of these books on this list, and let me know if there's any other books that weren't on this list that you think are absolute candidates to be blue chip key comics of the future. So, without further ado, I have to say a big thank you to my members, starting off with my Patreon members. Month after month, you all continue to support my channel, continue to support me to be able to do this 7 days a week for you all. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon member of the channel, that link is below. It's only $3.99 a month. Check out what kind of perks you get as being a member. I appreciate so much from the bottom of my heart all the support from all of you. And of course, I got to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members. That's only $1.99 a month. You can click that join button below to join and check out what kind of perks you get from this membership. I will be running a contest for both memberships at the end of July. So again, thank you all for the continued support. Nothing fulfills me more than being able to come out here 7 days a week and create content for all of you. So let me all know your thoughts of the video and the books in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Be well, and until next time.